So I wanted to talk about some of the specific changes in Diablo 2 Remastered.
Actually, it's Resurrected.
Whatever. I wanted to provide something more than a hot take because this is Blizzard's opportunity to make Diablo 2 a better game while ensuring it still stays true to what made it so great. I'll first touch on some of the difficulties with remastering in general, but also briefly discuss why Blizzard seems to be on track with this one. I think we can be optimistic that the remaster is in good hands, but there are changes out there that would make this game the best it can be. I'll also address purism and where I and the Diablo 2 Resurrected team differ on that philosophy. But most importantly, I'll also propose some changes that I think the Diablo 2 Resurrected team really need to consider making, including a charms-only inventory. I'll first start by saying that having watched Blizzard try to remaster two of its old classics, StarCraft and Warcraft 3, there can be no doubt that remastering old games comes with its own challenges. There are two main difficulties. What aspects of the game should be modernized, and updating the art. Blizzard can't just change everything in the name of modernizing it and turning away from what worked. People's expectations and the way they remember the game matter. Having watched the deep dive video where Vicarious Vision explains why and how they make these changes, I think that we are actually pretty lucky that they're the ones working on the remaster. I think it's in good hands. I'm generally wary of the changes to these old games. Nobody wants to have a remaster where the remaster is nothing like the original. But this team's core philosophy, I think, should put everyone at ease. Vicarious Visions will only consider quality of life changes where there's some informal workaround into the game itself. So, for example, transferring items, as you used to do, to one character from another isn't actually officially supported. You had to grab a friend to hold open the game while you dropped your items and picked them up with another character. Now they're providing a shared stash. Likewise, they're modifying the game so you can see games from difficulties that you've already completed on that character. Before, you were forced to join only the games that you could create, or you had a character in that difficulty that would look up the games for you and then you'd swap over. And it's pretty annoying. Another change Blizzard made was to allow a toggle for auto gold pickup. This change pushes the envelope a bit as it goes beyond something that had informal support in the game. However, I know I'll be using it because I'd prefer to not get carpal tunnel for picking up small stacks of gold.
Ah! Kyle! Dude, what's wrong? Carpal tunnel! Carpal tunnel! It's
So, what they've decided, however, is that they're not really looking to change anything related to the core gameplay. And so while we may remember Diablo 2 is perfect when you go back, I think that if you look at some of these informal workarounds, you'll find them be pretty frustrating. So, some of the changes that they've made, right, and people are proposing are pretty reasonable and comply with the core philosophy. I wouldn't be surprised if Blizzard actually did make the changes that have gotten most of the traction on Reddit and Diablo 2 Resurrected forum. So these things include things like single-player ladder rune words, killing the Cow King doesn't prevent you from opening a new cow portal, as well as stackable gems and runes. That being said, these changes, while important and should be made, perhaps aren't the only ones, and Vicarious Vision should go further. And that brings me to the change that I want to talk most about, which is a charms-only inventory or stash. And so this specific thing, as I've said earlier, is a charms-only inventory. And for those of you who are skeptical, just because we may have suffered 20 years ago isn't a good reason why we should continue with this arbitrary inconvenience. Telling us that we should make a choice between inventory space for stuff we'll end up putting in a stash and our charms, which we'll always want to use, is just arguing for inconvenience for the sake of inconvenience in the year 2021. I don't see how this is a bad thing, because again, I think it is something that has always been informally supported, and the only drawback is lower quality of life. So I'm going to make the case here for you, and I'm hoping Blizzard hears this as well, and I really think it could really help the game. And you may think that this thing is a huge change. I'll start by saying that. I'm going to tell you that it's just not true. I want to remind you that first, charms weren't even in Diablo 2 Classic. They were a thing that came with Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction. And while they're cool, and they definitely added the game, it's not clear that they were given much thought on how they should be held by characters when Blizzard North first made them. If anything, if you look carefully at what they are right now, they actually are an extension of your character's gear. And dropping one of them is more like dropping a piece of armor you're using than dropping any old random item that you're planning on putting in your stash later. You're always going to want to use them. You're always going to want to have charms there. The only reason you wouldn't is if you needed more space. So some of these charms are actually worth more than some of your gear on your characters. Like, there's no way that somebody's going to drop 3 of these Pally combat charms to pick up some piece of garbage, right? And if they are, they're going to do it in the most safe way they can possibly do. And that's just very inconvenient. And I also want to dissuade you from the idea that this is just normal inventory Tetris, right? there is still a workaround, right? For where you don't have to necessarily drop these expensive charms, but pick up the item. And while it's available, it's really annoying. It doesn't need to be done if they make a charms only inventory. So I'm going to show you. So here I am, all right? I pick up this item. I have my inventory open so I can hold the item. And the first thing I do is I wait for the people around me to leave. And if they don't, well, that sucks, right? I can either drop the item or drop my charms and pick it up, right? If they do leave, I do that. Or I take the risk of doing that and hoping they don't teleport on me and grab my stuff or they pick it. Or I do this other thing, which is to leave the game holding the item if I have no inventory space. I make a game quickly, and then I go and I identify the item after dropping all this stuff. Hopefully I put a password on the game, and then go back in the game if I want to.
Oh boy, here I go killing again.
And so that is the informal workaround that you can do that, if the inventory Tetris wasn't a thing, it wouldn't be a big deal, right? But it is. And fortunately, charms are lumped in with every other item. When charms actually affect your gear and your build and everything else while in your inventory, which is competed with space for picking other stuff up. And so some of you may be concerned that this is somehow a change to core gameplay. And the first thing you might think of is it's actually a small buff to Magic Find characters, because they usually have 8 spaces of space in their inventory to pick things up. If you're a dueler, you're probably holding all the charms, right? Only charms, because that's all you need, right? But if you think about it carefully, I'm going to show you exactly why that's not necessarily the case. If you're an MF character, you can do exactly what I've shown you, but if you can also make an MF character with a full inventory of charms and do exactly what I've shown you, it's very inconvenient, it's very annoying, but it can be done. So the concerns there about balance aren't really there, right? It can be really inconvenient for you to run a character full on an inventory, but you can do it. Right? And these changes aren't really going to affect Diablo 2 PvPers at all, because they're always going to have a full inventory anyway, right? All this allows them to do is pick up items now, which I think is great, right? You don't have people randomly leaving the game because they can't hold something. And if they did, now it's not a matter of them throwing pieces of gear down or things that are really core to what they're doing, like their charms, but them actually deciding, you know what, this piece of junk that I found isn't worth anything, right? Compared to this other stuff that I have, right? I'm no longer forced to pick between what my character is actually using versus other things that I might hope to sell. And for those who are also further concerned, if Blizzard does this in terms of balancing it, all they have to do is make charms that go in your normal inventory space, not the charms only inventory, make them inactive so you don't get the bonuses. So they're like any other item that you're hoping to sell or put in your stash. So, you prioritize everything that you're planning on use, put them in the inventory bag. Makes perfect sense to me. I really think that they need to do it. I really hope that you agree and you like this video in particular so that Blizzard can talk about this, because I actually think they really need to do it, right? It's not just a simple change like letting you make cow portals again. They may actually have to make another space so you can put charms, but I really think they need to do it. It's one thing that would make a huge difference to people playing the game. Lastly, I just wanted to talk about Blizzard's direction on the art. I know a lot of people have talked about it, and I was actually surprised and impressed with what I saw at the start. I watched what I could about the gameplay footage. I really wish there were more. I wanted to see more of the later acts, Act 3, Act 4, Act 5, but we got a pretty good sense of what we see in Act 1 and Act 2. And I was always worried, as I always am with a remaster, that they don't get the vision for the art. And I think they were actually incredibly faithful to what the game is like. And if Blizzard North was now here, and they would probably said, yeah, that was what I was trying to get at. And I think we should be impressed. But there are some things I think they went in the wrong direction about. I won't be the first person to say this, but I will probably give my own spin on it here. And the first problem with all the characters is that they look 20 years older. And while the game is 20 years old, the characters don't have to age with the first people that started playing the game. Like 20 years ago, I was playing this game. They don't have to age with me, right? There are people out here who are going to play the game for the first time, and they don't have to see them as old as the people who played the game in the first place. Second, right, I think with the Amazon, it's very unfortunate. And it's not only the Amazon. Some of the artists have taken liberties with the characters beyond just consistently making them all older. And that is, in the case of the Amazon, when I first looked at her and I looked at the facial structure and I sort of sat there, and no offense or anything, but I looked at her, I was like, is that a man? And I mean, we have the Amazon who's supposed to be attractive, feminine, beautiful in general, and then, she kind of looks manly. And as for the assassin, it just doesn't look like the same person from the Diablo that was made 20 years ago, and they deviated too far from the source material. So I really hope that with this video you can agree, you can like, maybe subscribe, and hopefully get this out to Blizzard about some of the changes that they probably need to start consider making. And maybe be a little bit bolder about what they do. They've got the right philosophy. They just need the ideas. Thanks.